Welcome to today's Table Talks. My name is Scott Kappelman, and again, I'm joined by my regular co-host, Clark McGehee and Tyce Lawbinger. Clark, how are you?
I'm doing good. I just realized, seriously, just as we just started, I don't have any notes in front of me, and both of you do. So it's making me look a little unprofessional, but that's okay, I guess.
I was thinking just the opposite. It was making you look very smart, that you had all your information tucked away in your brain, and you're ready to go.
That's exactly the case.
That's what
today.
it was.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
See, that's actually really funny because me and Brooklyn last night talked about how iPads are like the new thing. Like presenters just have iPads. And
yes, that's right.
I mean, that's the most professional looking thing. Like no one goes up with note cards anymore. Like you go up with your iPad. Right.
So we look professional, Tyce.
Yeah, well, I have a laptop, so I'm probably the least prepared because you have an iPad. Clark's got it all up in his head, and I got a laptop.
That's okay.
You're living in the 1800s over there, Tyce, with your laptop.
All right, now we're recording this on February the 13th. Are either of you guys ready? Because you're kind of in the newlywed game.
Yeah.
Are you ready for Valentine's tomorrow?
You know, I have a great gift, but it is not going to get here in time.
Oh my!
Yeah, so
I'm so sorry,
but I'm happy with the gift. So Annabeth won't mind.
Okay,
but
yeah, I have a gift and a backup gift. My gift, we were gonna go.
Gift.
We're planning on going to the baseball game. That's gonna be the gift. But obviously obviously for you all, you don't know because it's gonna be recording later. First game was moved, rescheduled, so chance we don't get to go. But I already gotten a smaller gift. And so I added to the smaller gift now in case we don't get to go.
Okay. That's very smart.
Yep.
I'm happy for both of you. That's great.
And if you're listening to the podcast and you're wondering why we're recording so early, because this podcast will be pretty late on in the game, Sarav is about to have a baby, hopefully here soon.
Digital minister is about to have a baby, and so he needed to get these things done early.
Yep.
And this may not be released until the first part of March, but that's okay. We're excited to get it recorded. Now, if you've been watching, and we hope you have, this is the third in a 3-part series on school choice. Yep. And what we've tried to do in this series is overview homeschooling and should Christian parents send their children to homeschool or do homeschooling. And then should Christian parents in the second episode send their children to Christian schools. And then this is the third episode, should Christian parents choose to send their children to public school. We want to make a disclaimer at the very beginning, like we have in each of the other episodes. We are not trying to suggest one over the other. We're simply trying to overview material that might be related to the discussion you would need to have with your spouse about where your children need to go to school and what's best for them. And so do not hear that we're trying to recommend one over the other. This is just a discussion to give you as much information as possible. And as I said, I think in a previous episode, you and your spouse may have already talked about 90% of the things that we're going to mention, and so it may not be a whole lot of new information, but we hope it'll be helpful information, so keep that in mind. Now, all three of us, we admitted in the first episode, we're kind of speaking out of school, if you will, because we all went to public school, and we've talked about homeschooling and Christian schools, and none of us went to those.
No.
So today, let's go back and readdress our public school experience. Tyce, did you have a good public school experience?
I had a fantastic public school experience.
Okay.
I loved every minute of it. So
no regrets?
No regrets, no. The only trouble I ever had was with sports, and it was just because we had 4 coaches in 4 years, and so it's just...
That makes it tough.
It does make it tough because you learn one scheme, and then you got to learn a new one, or a coach might like you, and then a coach might not like you, so it's just I never knew what was going on.
But from an academic side, everything went fine.
No, everything went really well, and I'll get into more of that as we go on.
Okay. So. Clark, you had a good experience, bad experience, mediocre experience?
I had a great experience, yeah. I really enjoyed my time. I'm a very sociable person, so I utilized that well in my public school experience. And the only regret I might have is I didn't do any sports in public school, but Andre Hochstetler, a member of our church, came to me recently and he told me that most people that were in the band wish they could play a sport, and most people that did sports wish they could play an instrument. So,
and you were in the band.
I was in the band, yeah. So that encouraged me a little bit to say, well, I'm glad that I'm glad that I did it, but I maybe would have thought about doing both and doing less of band and maybe some more of like basketball or something like that.
Now, in light of your own confession that you're an extrovert, I must ask, did you ever get in trouble for talking in school?
Yes and no.
Oh,
I kind of played my cards right and was friends with the teachers enough that they didn't mind it too much whenever I was talking, because they were like, oh, and I did my schoolwork too, so it was like they were kind of, oh well, he's talking, but
he does know what he's doing.
Right. I also could have just neglected in my mind and not worried about whatever the teachers were saying and gotten in trouble more often than I remember, but.
There's just something to me, Tyce. I don't know if you feel this way.
Yeah.
I can just see a small Clark, second, third grade, and the teacher saying, "Clark, be quiet."
Oh, that young? That's probably true.
Did you ever
Yeah.
did you have to flip cards where you were like constantly on a different color or move a clip or something?
Oh, no, actually, I was a very goal oriented, even as a kid. And I was like, I want green cards.
All right,
so
well, there you go.
I wasn't a perfect green carder. I won't lie.
Yeah.
In fact, I got a red card my very first day of school, which is we could talk about that. Like first day of pre-K,
Wow.
seriously. But other than that, I stuck pretty heavy to it. So.
Okay. Gotcha.
All right. Well, I went to a public school. I had a great experience. Mine was very small, of course. So if you got in trouble, it was a serious matter because the teachers knew your parents and would probably see them before the week ended. So it was kind of a motivation to do the right thing. But I did enjoy my experience. It was great.
Yeah. And the teachers would sometimes, to that note, probably enforce the same way your parents would enforce.
Absolutely.
So,
well, I did want to get into that at some point, but I'll just go ahead and mention it here. Coach Russell was our elementary principal. It was a man. He did some coaching on the side before he got to our school. But nonetheless, Coach Russell walked around the halls with a paddle in his back pocket.
Wow.
It was
that's a small one.
Well, it was about that long, and it was kind of thin, and he could slide it in his back pocket, and it stuck up above his belt line and kind of up this half of his back.
Purposefully so you could see
Oh,
it.
absolutely.
Sure.
As you saw him walking up and down the hall with that paddle, you knew you better behave, because if he didn't see the kind of behavior he was looking for, he would pull that paddle out, and he didn't mind popping you once or twice right there in the hall.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, but again, I went to school in a different era of time.
Yeah.
Right.
It was
So
in
Rob
his
told
back
me that's what he
pocket.
does at home too.
He has the same. No, if you're watching this, Rob does not do that.
Yeah,
Don't
that's
call
a joke.
911.
No,
Reporting to
that's a joke.
DHS. All right, so we've used a little bit of scripture along the way. We've not really read the scripture, just made reference points. The one that I wanted to provide for you today that reminds us there were some Hebrew young men who were put into a public education system of some type, and that would be Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, because when they were taken into captivity in Daniel chapter 1, the Babylonian king began to train them to be Babylonians, and he changed the way they were taught, he changed the way they dressed, he changed the way they ate their meals, and Daniel and his friends had an aptitude for learning, so they were educated in the Babylonian ways. Now, they also held on to their Hebrew Jewish background, and so we don't want to deny that, but I just found that interesting. And then Paul was educated by Gamaliel. That was some form of school. I don't know if we'd call that a Christian school.
Yeah, it might be more of a private
Jewish school.
Yeah.
So I just thought we'd mention that. But my favorite verse as we think about this is Jesus grew in wisdom, stature, and favor with God and man. So we know Jesus, being a boy like us, the three of us, he was a guy. He did have to learn as he grew up because he was fully human. So he was learning along the way. Now, how he was trained, that's up for debate, but he was a learner. So those are just some quick reference points. Any others that y'all might have today?
Well, Tyce fortunately remembered actually that I had this verse, and I didn't even remember, but I did want to share
We have
this.
tried to record this, by the way.
We have.
Previously, and the camera died.
Right.
So this is our second attempt of this video.
That is true.
Go ahead.
So last video, I had Matthew 28, 19, and 20, which is the Great Commission, which might be somewhat of a surprise for this public school conversation, but it says, "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you, and behold, I'm with you always to the end of the age." So I wanted to put emphasis on the all nations. You get a lot of different diversity in public school. You get to interact with a lot of different types of people, and we kind of get that opportunity to fulfill the Great Commission. So I'm putting the emphasis on diversity. I have a feeling later on in the episode we'll probably put emphasis on the gospel sharing part of it within that public school system. But
Yeah, I would say, especially in Starkville, with us being a college town and having such a large international population, the public school, Starkville High School, does have a large number of international people. So you're exposed to the nations, as you just read about,
Right.
in that verse.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's not the case when I grew up in Holka. There were no international people at all. It was just either white or African American. So,
Right. But even that, though,
Yeah.
is something that you'd experience more than you might in homeschooling or possibly even Christian schooling.
right,
So.
that's true. So those are good points. All right, let's dive into why do you think parents choose to send their children to public schools if they're Christians? Why do you think they do that? Do you have thoughts on that?
It's free.
Okay, that was at the top of my list too. They pay taxes and it's free.
Yeah. So
There's no money involved. Whereas
mean,
homeschooling, you've got to buy the curriculum
and every meal.
and pay for the meals, and then you also, in a Christian school or a private school, you have to pay a tuition. So it
Right.
is free. That's a good point. Any other thoughts?
They don't have to teach themselves, so they can just let someone else who's a little more knowledgeable, probably went to school or at least got a certificate, to teach them instead of them. Like if I had to teach somebody history, I'd say you're out of luck.
If it was math, that would be your wheelhouse.
Yes, that's right.
That makes sense. Tyce, any other thoughts?
There's a bus system. I mean, there's a lot of reasons. I mean, just
Yeah.
having a bus to come pick up your kids is such a blessing for a lot of parents that both work in the mornings. Just not have to worry about their
Kid
kids.
can get on the bus and get to school.
Yeah.
The parents head off to work.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, that's another reason right there is both parents might work.
Yeah,
So that's one reason to send to a public
that's
school.
that's true.
Over homeschooling, maybe. Christian schooling would work the same way. But
So I had on my list, there could be more educational opportunities in a public school. And by that, I mean there are some advanced math and science classes that some public schools are able to offer that would be a little more challenging maybe to get in a Christian school or in a homeschool environment. I'm sure there's curriculums for those, and I'm not saying Christian schools don't have quality teachers. They do. But there's some really upper-level courses that can get you ready for college and beyond. But maybe even another section of this is VOTEC classes. I know at Starkville High School, there's a VOTEC component to the school, or there was in the past. And a lot of students who maybe weren't on the academic track for the long term would get in the VOTEC track and pick up some skills that they would enhance at community college, and then they were ready for the workforce. And they did a fantastic job with VOTEC skills.
yeah, no, that is true. Because VOTEC, now while you can do some VOTEC type stuff, especially homeschooling, I mean, you can at least share with them your own trade, but the VOTEC classes might offer them something that's a little different than what you do.
Right.
So that is good. That's a good reason. I enjoyed my VOTEC classes because I took some when I was
You took
in
some?
public school. Yes, sir.
At our school, we didn't call them VOTEC. We just had home ec and ag. And for the most part, the guys took the ag classes and the girls took home ec. Now, there were a couple of friends of mine and myself. We needed one extracurricular class along the way, and we took a home ec class where it was about parenting and marriage and family. And during baseball season that spring, one of the assignments was for a week you had to carry around a Cabbage Patch doll.
Yeah.
And during the games, you had to pay someone to babysit your Cabbage Patch doll to learn about the responsibility of being a parent.
Wow.
And it's an experience I'll never forget because we were on the baseball diamond playing baseball, and there were our 3 Cabbage Patch kids lined up in strollers.
Oh,
And
that's
the people
so
we
funny.
paid were watching them.
And you were so worried about that little Cabbage Patch doll. weren't
Not a
you?
bit. But it did teach me about parental responsibility very early that I don't
Yeah.
want to be a parent right now.
Right.
So anyway. All right, I had it on my list also. There are a lot of extracurricular activities in a public school, in addition to sports. There's some others I'll mention, but I did want to make this note. During the Super Bowl, I don't know if y'all remember, there was a commercial that the NFL produced, and it was about flag football for girls. And the NFL is really making a push to get individual teams to start girls flag football programs in public schools. And the New Orleans Saints, I had just seen this a couple of days before the Super Bowl, had engaged the Mississippi Public School Athletic Association, and they're going to sponsor 8 teams in South Mississippi this fall as a pilot program. So
Wow.
girls flag football will hit Mississippi for the first time, courtesy of the New Orleans Saints in the fall of this year.
That's
I wonder
crazy.
what schools are getting that privilege right there.
Well, they're all coast schools.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that they wanted it within, I think, a 2-hour radius of New Orleans, and they're only going to use 8 as a pilot program, and then they'll branch out after that if it works real well.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting.
That is very
But there's way more than that. There's band, you mentioned that. There's drama. You've got choir programs, robotics teams, debate teams. The list is endless on extracurriculars.
Yeah, and you're like with that, just your bubble is bigger, and I think I mentioned a bubble in every episode.
Yeah.
But like your bubble is just so much bigger of not only what you get to experience, but what people get to watch you do. So whether it be sports and coaches come, like college, come watch you, see what you do, but same with like extracurriculars. It's a lot easier to tie your name to one of your teachers at school, at a public school, than it is, hey, this is my private school teacher. I learned under this person. When this is my bio teacher that I learned under at school, and this person can write me off a good note for the school that they went to. And your bubble's just bigger. You get to experience more, but you also get to be seen by more people.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good point.
I most definitely came across some of the most different and unique people, not even in a bad way, but just different and unique people in public school.
Yeah.
So I agree with that statement.
So the other couple I have on my list, I had that children are exposed to ethnic diversity, which you
Right.
mentioned with the Matthew 28:18-20, and that some parents really believe that school is for educational purposes and that the home is for spiritual training. And so they're not trying to overlap those two things together. They're wanting their child to get the best education possible, but then when the child's at home, they'll do the spiritual part of it as a follow-up or as a overall comprehensive work that they're doing with the child. So those are just some things I'd written down. Benefits of sending a child to public school. I'm trying to go outside. The first question was, why do you think they send their children to public school? But what are benefits that come out of this? And we've kind of mentioned a few of these, but there may be some others.
I guess I can speak from personal standpoint is the opportunity for dual credit college classes that you don't get anywhere else. I graduated college in 3 years, and it probably would have been 5 semesters instead of 6 if I went to anything but a Bible college, because I got over my 40-hour block done while in public school. And that's just the opportunity that I had with all the college classes that they offered, where I could take dual credit. So
were you doing dual credit or advanced placement? AP?
Dual credit. So everything, yeah. So no AP classes because those wouldn't have helped me. They would have maybe pushed me on a little further, put me in more advanced. So like an AP class would have been calculus. I went college statistics, so I get my math credits done. So just having the opportunity to start taking college classes early, and then you can spend less money in college. So that's just a huge benefit for me in public school.
I met some of my best friends at public school. So guys that were, I still talk to today, just hung out with this past Monday. I met him in 3rd grade. So
he's still a friend.
He is still a friend. And I have
That's
more
so
people
sad
like
he
that.
can't find more friends.
Yeah, no, you're right. I know, we were in a public school. I don't know. You had plenty of people.
I had written down that children who go to public school, they're going to learn to be adaptable because they're going to be with kids from all backgrounds, some who have a great home life, some who have a very poor home life. And so they're going to have to be adaptable. They're also going to learn, and some parents would see this as a negative, some street smarts.
I like this point. I want to talk about it some more.
Okay, we'll dive into it.
Yeah, no, I think that is very big. And not just talking, like, it can have a negative connotation to it. Like, people hear street smarts, that's wrong. But there's just some common sense things that you can learn being in public school. And like you said, it's just how you interact, but it's also sometimes how you keep your head down. And I don't
say anything.
Yeah, and don't say anything. Like,
And
I
there's
don't
wisdom
need
in
to
that.
be involved in everything, or people don't always need to know I'm in the room. And not so you can be deceivious or mischievous or whatever you want to do with it. Like, I know the slang is the most powerful person's the quietest person in the room. I'm not saying it for that. I'm just saying so that way people don't look at you wrong. Like, you just keep your head down sometimes. Or yeah. So.
Well, Eli, again, I think I've mentioned this. If you've watched our 3 episodes, our 3 kids went to public school, graduated from Starkville High School, and Eli came up with a term he called cafeteria rules. And at the Starkville High cafeteria, it was every man for himself because the teachers didn't really necessarily oversee how the lines formed and where the food was picked up. And so you learn quickly, if you're going to get your food, you better push through and make some friends in the right places to get in the line at the right spot to get the food you want. And so oftentimes he'll talk about, hey, this is a situation, even though he's graduated, he'll say, this is a cafeteria rule situation. We got to do this.
That's pretty funny.
And so that was a street smart lesson I think he learned, was cafeteria rules.
Oh, yeah. No, and I think it also just helps, like, hey, you get exposed to things like, I mean, it's illegal, but like kids are going to smoke in high school. Like you understand how to interact with people, not just different ethnic groups, but what it means to be smart around people that are doing that.
Yeah.
And you don't just say, well, this is bad because my parents said so. I'm not saying private school or homeschool kids do that, but you just kind of learn that these are things you need to avoid, but not comment on. You can just avoid, and it's okay.
And you learn not to snitch.
Oh, yeah.
That was Clancy's big thing, I think, coming through junior high. I would say, you need to tell the teacher, I'm not going to snitch.
Yeah.
That's trouble, Dad. You don't snitch on your friends.
Yeah, I think there's discussion there.
Yeah.
I think it is important to share truth. But there's also discernment when it comes to that.
Yeah, that's right.
Discerning when and how.
But that's kind of what I had in mind.
Yeah.
With, I think kids learn some street smarts. I also have that I think children in the public school, they are exposed to expert teachers in each subject.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Petroni is a math teacher at Starkville High School. There's no doubt in any of our kids' minds that he could be a college professor. He's incredibly smart when it comes to math.
Mm-hmm.
And he has chosen to devote his life to a public high school, and all of the students who come through his class are well trained for math. And our kids have done extremely well in college mathematics classes because Dr. Petroni was so good at what he did. But he doesn't teach science and he doesn't teach English because there are other teachers who are really good at those, and they teach those.
Yeah.
And so I think, even looking back at my high school experience, Mr. Scott was our math teacher. He was fantastic. Miss Doss was or Miss Pettigrew was our English teacher. She was amazing. Miss Hill was our history teacher. She did a fantastic job. So you get all of that diversity in one place, and they're really good teachers. So
yeah.
Clark, you're about to laugh because we got something going on in the background. We're not sure what it is.
No, we do not. We should be the only 4 people in the office right now. So,
and there's weird sounds coming from different parts of the building right now.
That's
so
true.
I'm not sure what's going on.
No, I agree with that statement, and that's so commendable to have teachers like that. That really do care, and they care about what they're doing. You don't go to a public school and stay in a public school for a super long time and not really care about what it is you're doing. Right. Because the statistics about teachers that join and leave within 2 years is extremely high. Yeah. But that means those teachers that stick around, like they love what they're doing and they care about the students. So
I know we are running a little long on this section, but I do want to mention your point E, children bring home teachable moments every day. I think that is very big. And I know we can relate it to what you want to talk about. I think you talk about it a lot here at the office of being salt and light at the school. But I think even just like moments for parents to be able to teach your kid how to be an adult. Everything in a lab can go perfect because it's a lab, but in real life things are different. And if you want to teach your kid to be an adult, which I think God has called us to do, there's a reference of us being children being arrows that we are to put in. I say us because I was a child not too long ago, but children being put as arrows to be shot out. And so I think just having, hey, this is what happened in school today, and I don't understand why someone thinks that way. And there's just something that you can't get at a private school or homeschool because you are essentially in a lab that the parent or the Christian school has cultivated to make it as best as possible. And so that way, I'm sorry, I got distracted there. Yeah, it's just teachable moments that kids can bring home.
No, I'm glad you like emphasized that point really, because that is, whenever I first came to Cross Point, I was pretty pro homeschool, just completely not even considering another option. But I do think that there's a lot of wisdom in that truth, that you do get teachable moments. And if you're going to public school, I really do truly believe now, I think I'm a little more well-rounded, that each of these options, I said it in the homeschool episode, when done right, can be good options. Yeah. And, that is how you do public school, right? Is when they come across difficult things, or even life things that are like teachable adult moments, right? You take advantage of those. And you can speak to that a little more as the only one with kids.
I would say that our kitchen table for the years that our kids were in the public school were the greatest teaching moments we ever had, because we talked about things from cussing to smoking to drugs to sex outside of marriage to just bad teachers that sometimes you have to endure for a semester, because not all the teachers are great. There are some that you kind of have to go through. We talked about not making teams when they got cut and they thought they were going to make the team, and how to deal with disappointment. And so we had life lessons almost every night at our table. And it was a great learning lab that was not perfect.
Yeah.
And I appreciate what you said, because most learning labs, you want everything to be perfect and sterile, but it's not going to be at the public school, and you're going to have a lot of chances. Now, as parents, you better take advantage of those.
Yeah.
You don't just join in and be their best friend. You kind of point out, as you said earlier, this is truth, this is a lie, this is acceptable, this is unacceptable.
All right, so Pastor Scott, we're running late on time, but I think we would be doing the people a disservice if you didn't explain this, and this is going to be out of the blue, so I hope you're ready. But how do you get the student to communicate those things to you? Because I hear time and time again that parents say, and I did this too. I would go home and I would go to my room usually. So it's like, how do you say, hey, how was your day at school? Well, it was good. Well, okay, can you elaborate on that a little bit? Like, how do you get them to communicate that?
I think it all starts with a great, healthy relationship when they're very small children, and you start talking about real topics when they're 2, 3, and 4, and they begin their communication skills. You don't wait till they're teenagers. You've got to start talking about sex and drugs and your expectations when they're 3, 4, 5, not in great detail like you would when they get older, but you've got to open up those communication lines, and you've got to create a level of trust where they know they can say anything and it's not going to be judged. You're not going to judge them and say, like, oh, if you do that, you're not going to be my kid. It's like, hey, I want to hear about that. Let's talk about what this means and how we can work through this and what you need to learn from this. And so those communication lines have to start really early. Yeah. And I think that's the key. That's the best I can give you on that.
That's great. I appreciate it.
All right, let's blaze through the negatives.
Yeah, let's go through the negatives of public school. I'll put at the very beginning, some kids are going to get bullied.
Some kids are.
It's a reality. There's going to be some tough kids in the school, and they may not like your child, and there may be bullying. So that's there.
Yep. To that, too, I guess it's kind of to the point. There's going to be kids that disagree with the way you taught your kid to grow up, and they're going to not just bully you for the way that your kid acts, but they're going to try and change your kid's mind.
Yes.
Like, no, your parent's actually not in charge. Like,
yes,
other people say true things too. And so there's going to be that issue of that's going to come.
If you're not doing it the correct way, and they're introduced to all these new different types of things that are against what you feel like you've taught them, then they can, wander off and that kind of thing. But again, when you do it correct, that doesn't happen. But
I had down, the way I expressed is they can begin to make unhealthy life choices if they're exposed to them too often and you're not following up.
Right.
So that's what I would call that. And then this is one that I think we've talked about in a previous episode, but I want to hit on it again. One of the downsides of public school is there's a lot of emphasis on the upper academic kids, a lot of help given to them, good classes, strong teachers, a lot of remedial help at the bottom, and the kids in the middle can get lost in the shuffle. If they're just an average kid, they may not get the attention that they need, and it can be problematic. So I just want to mention that as well. All right, so what should parents do to ensure that their children get a quality education in the public school? I just wrote down, get involved in the school where your child goes. That's my best advice. We were involved in PTA. Kelly was a homeroom teacher, a homeroom mom, classroom mom, whatever you want to call that at times. We participated every time they had a big event, field trip. We went on those field trips. One of us did. So if you're going to just send your kid to public school, then wash your hands and walk away, you're in deep trouble. You better get involved. And so get involved from day one. I think that's a real critical key. Any other thoughts on that?
Well, and that does go to a downside of, you don't know what's going to happen, and you're not paying for the safety of your child.
No.
Your tax dollars are paying just for the building. You're not paying for the safety of your child, and so you do have to get involved, and that can be a downside. But it's an upside to parenting and the fact that you can be there and set examples for your kids.
Yeah.
That, so.
And I would say our church was so kind and gracious. If our kids had a field trip, it was never a big deal for me to be gone, you know, for the field trip. Or Kelly was a stay-at-home mom at the time, so she sometimes was keeping Clancy, and I would go with either Carly Beth or Eli. But then sometimes she would go, and I'd keep Clancy. So we kind of had our system worked out. And then we were very involved. Stayed, you know, got to know school board members and things like that, so we could have the right conversations along the way.
Yeah.
All right. We've run out of time. And there's some crazy things happening
that was
in this
definitely
building.
a cough of some sort.
Somebody's in this building, and we're about to find out. But what I want to say is, are there any other general thoughts that either one of you want to make about this whole school choice issue, in addition to the public school?
Not anymore.
No, yeah, just, I mean, the best public school could be something very small, like smaller than your private Christian school. Sometimes the best Christian school is the one that only has 30 kids total, and you graduate with 5 students.
Yeah.
But, so yeah, I mean, truly it is the parents' choice. They have to be discerning, and they have to decide for themselves what's best for their kid. And I know that's harder with public school because we don't have school choice. You just kind of go where you're at unless you have a county school and a city school that you can choose from. But other than that, that's really when you do have to decide, hey, is the public school just not good because it's a poor school? And maybe I don't want to send my kid to private school or public or homeschool, but that's just the best option because of that.
Yeah. Well, I wrote down 3 things. I'm going to mention these real fast. If you're going to try the public school, my advice would be to start early. Because I think it's really, I do. I think the earlier you jump in the public school, the better. Because if you go homeschool or private Christian school until the 5th or 6th grade, and then you try to jump in, it's going to be really challenging. And so I think you should start with the public school first and give it a try.
Yep.
The second thing is take your school choice for your child 1 year at a time.
Yeah.
Just go
That's
1
huge.
year,
That's so good.
give it a try, see if it works. And there may be some years where you need to make changes based on your child and the development of that child, but take it 1 year at a time and make a reassessment at the end of that school year. And then don't be afraid to change strategies if necessary based on your child's needs. So
yeah, but do understand your child's needs are not necessarily your own need. And when you do pull your kid out and put them back in and pull them out and put them back in, that can cause some issues, like when a child moves around a lot and it's hard for them to make friends.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
sometimes there is a sense of, I don't like it, but my child is
Doing well.
and I have to prioritize them rather than what I think is best in the moment at that time,
Right.
which is hard. But
Yeah, that's right. So, all right. Well, we are so glad that you've joined us for these 3 episodes. I hope it's
I'm
been
glad
helpful.
we got them done.
Yeah, I'm glad we got them done. I'm glad Clark survived this last one.
Yeah.
We're not sure what's going on around the corner, but we're fixing to go find
I
out.
hope we're about to survive.
But we hope you've enjoyed the 3 episodes on school choice. This will give you things to think about, talk about, and if we can ever be of assistance in answering questions personally, don't feel like you can't come and approach us about these things. We hope you'll have a great day and come back and join us for the next Table Talks.